we've just finished the second round of the Democratic debates. And it had some interesting results. By far and large, the standout candidate for this debate, for me, was Tulsi Gabbard. She completely destroyed Kamala Harris. And while I'm on that subject, let me just say, she literally uttered the very things I was saying in my past Kamala Harris-esque videos. I think I've uploaded about two. One about Charlamagne the God supporting Kamala Harris, and the other about CNN backing Kamala Harris. And in each of those, I gave evidence as to why that was a bad idea. Ironically enough, during this debate, Tulsi Gabbard gave those same points, those same examples that I set in those past videos, and I found that incredibly interesting. And by far, she was and is the most progressive candidate out of that group of individuals that decided to have the debate. I'd say second would be Andrew Yang. And I know there's some people that like Julian Castro. He doesn't do anything for me. But Tulsi and Andrew by far were the most progressive candidates on that stage. The second thing that happened during this debate is a lot of ganging up on Joe Biden. The wolves smelled the blood and they came to feast. He and rightfully so, he had a lot to answer for, and he had to defend himself quite a bit. And I got to say, I mean, politically, as a political strategy, ganging up on Joe Biden was a smart move. I mean, he's vulnerable. So I can't be mad at them for that. Yeah, I'll be interested to see how this reflects on Kamala Harris's numbers after this. And I am going to have some highlights from this debate. It's not going to be as much as the first debate or the debate we had the day before. But I do have some highlights from the debate. And I also have sort of the back and forth that really started off with Kamala and Joe, and how Tulsi sort of ended up becoming intertwined in that and exposed Kamala for who she is. And it's interesting also because in the debate I covered yesterday, I had said, man, I really wish Warren and Bernie were on stage with Kamala so they can expose her for who she really was. Bernie and Liz weren't there, but Tulsi Gabbard was. And I gotta say, out of those two, she's probably the more aggressive. She's gonna bite her tongue the least. Bernie doesn't really go after people the way we want him to go after people. And while Liz is a progressive, she definitely plays politics to the nth degree. So I don't think she would have, not as hard, gone after Kamala Harris like Tulsi Gabbard did. So hats off to Tulsi. Yeah. So I do have some questions for you guys. Do you think this is going to affect Biden's numbers as well? Because by and large, he is the front runner right now, and Bernie Sanders is number 2. Do you think this debate is going to change the way the numbers are reflected going forward? Or do you think things are just going to remain sort of the same? Do you think any of the candidates are going to get a bump? I know Kamala had got a bump during the debate some time ago, but her numbers fell again. Do you think the same thing is going to happen with Tulsi? Do you think she's going to get sort of a bump, and then, her numbers are sort of going to even out again? It should be interesting. It should be interesting. So, yeah, coming up, highlights from the debate, and then the sort of back and forth between Kamala and Joe, and Tulsi exposing Kamala. If you like what you see, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe and comment. I really appreciate that. If you don't like what you see, if you don't like what you hear, let me know. I'm always down for a debate, and I'm always open to criticism. I can take it. Thanks for watching Reading My Lips. Talk to you soon. Peace.
Go easy on me, kid.
How you doing? You good?
Mr. President, kids belong in classrooms, not cages.
Beating Donald Trump, definitely not impossible.
And the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math.
The call of this election is the call to unite in common cause and common purpose. That's how we will beat Donald Trump.
Just look at this stage, made up of very diverse people from diverse backgrounds, went on to be mayors, senators, governors, congresswomen. And we are strong and great because of this diversity. So, Mr. President, let's get something straight. We love it. We are not leaving it. We are here to stay, and we're certainly not going to leave it to you.
I listened to the American families who said 4 years is just not enough to transition into this new plan, so I devised a plan where it's going to be 10 years of a transition. It will be a public plan under my plan for Medicare and a private plan.
The senator's had several plans so far, and anytime someone tells you you're going to get something good in 10 years, you should wonder why it takes 10 years. If you notice, there's no talk about the fact that the plan in 10 years will cost $3 trillion. You will lose your employer-based insurance.
Insurance companies, for these plans that rely on insurance companies, I'm sorry, they're for-profit companies. They have an obligation to their shareholders.
I don't understand why Democrats on this stage are fear-mongering about universal health care. It makes no sense.
Senator Biden, your plan will keep and allow insurance companies to remain with status quo, doing business as usual.
I'm going to work to get us to a point where Medicare for all, where everyone is covered. But this pitting against progressives, against moderates, saying one is unrealistic and the other doesn't care enough, that to me is dividing our party and demoralizing us in face of the real enemy here.
Open borders is a right-wing talking point. And frankly, I'm disappointed that some folks, including some folks on this stage, have taken the bait.
I disagree that we should decriminalize our border.
A private detention facility that currently houses 2,700 children. I saw children lined up single file based on gender, being walked into barracks. The policies of this administration have been facilitated by laws on the book that allow them to be incarcerated as though they've committed crimes.
You should be able to be sent back. It's a crime. It's a crime.
First of all, Mr. Vice President, it looks like one of us has learned the lessons of the past and one of us hasn't. Let me begin by telling you.
We can no longer allow a white nationalist to be in the White House, number one.
Mr. Vice President, you can't have it both ways. You invoke President Obama more than anybody in this campaign. You can't do it when it's convenient and then dodge it when it's not. Mr. Vice President has said that since the 1970s, every major crime bill, major and minor, has had his name on it. And you can't just now come out with a plan to put out that fire. Mr. Vice President, there's a saying in my community, you're dipping into the Kool-Aid and you don't even know the flavor. You need to come to the city of Newark and see the reforms that we put in place. We have a system right now that's broken, and if you want to compare records, and frankly, I'm shocked that you do, I am happy to do that. Because
Well, I love your affection for me. You spent a lot of time with me.
You know what?
Senator Harris, you have also been quite critical of Vice President Biden's policies on race, specifically on the issue of busing in the 1970s, having benefited from busing when you were a young child. Vice President Biden says that your current position on busing, you're opposed to federally mandated busing, that position is the same as his position. Is he right?
That is simply false. And let's be very clear about this. When Vice President Biden was in the United States Senate working with segregationists to oppose busing, which was the vehicle by which we would integrate America's public schools, had I been in the United States Senate at that time, I would have been completely on the other side of the aisle. And let's be clear about this. Had those segregationists their way, I would not be a member of the United States Senate, Cory Booker would not be a member of the United States Senate, and Barack Obama would not have been in a position to nominate him to the title he now holds. And so, on that issue, we could not be more apart, which is that the Vice President has still failed to acknowledge that it was wrong to take the position that he took at that time. Now, I would like to also talk about this conversation about Eric Garner, because I, too, met with his mother. And one of the things that we've got to be clear about is that this President of the United States, Donald Trump, while he has been in office, has quietly been allowing the United States Department of Justice to shut down consent decrees, to stop pattern and practice investigations. On that case, we also know that the Civil Rights Division, this is important, the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice said charges should have been filed, but this United States Department of Justice usurped, and I believe it is because that president did not want those charges to go forward, and they overrode a decision by the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice. Under my administration, the Civil Rights Division will reign, and there will be independent investigations.
Vice President Biden, I want to give you a chance to respond to what Senator Harris just said.
When Senator Harris was the Attorney General for 8 years in the state of California, there were two of the most segregated school districts in the country, in Los Angeles and in San Francisco. And she did not, I didn't see a single solitary time she brought a case against them to desegregate them. Secondly, she also was in a situation where she had a police department when she was there that in fact was abusing people's rights. And the fact was that she, in fact, was told by her own people, that her own staff, that she should do something about and disclose to defense attorneys like me that you, in fact, have been, the police officer did something that did not give you information that would exculpate your client. She didn't do that. She never did it. And so what happened? Along came a federal judge and said, enough, enough, and he freed 1,000 of these people. If you doubt me, Google 1,000 prisoners freed, Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. And Senator Harris, your response?
This is simply not true. And as Attorney General of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice, I am proud of the work we did, work that has received national recognition for what has been the important work of reforming a criminal justice system and cleaning up the consequences of the bills that you passed when you were in the United States Senate for decades. It was the work of creating one of the first in the nation initiatives around re-entering former offenders and getting them jobs and counseling.
Thank you, Senator.
I did the work as Attorney General of putting body cameras on special agents in the state of California, and I'm proud of that work.
I want to bring in Congresswoman Gabbard. Congresswoman Gabbard, you took issue with Senator Harris confronting Vice President Biden at the last debate. You called it a, quote, false accusation that Joe Biden is a racist. What's your response?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response?
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response,
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.